This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I'll just hand it over to Colin Kinchler to do an acknowledgement of country.
Thanks, Taji. Yama, Nega, Murray, Colin Kinchler, New South Wales. Just like to acknowledge, as always, and I suppose it's a good thing to do an acknowledgement or have a welcome to country when we conduct our business on Aboriginal lands right across this place that is this continent that we call Australia. Acknowledge where I'm joining you from this afternoon for this webinar, which is out at Barramadigal lands, or Parramatta. I'm a Gomeroi man from northwest New South Wales, and I'm just like to acknowledge that I'm on Aboriginal land, First Nation land, and to acknowledge where Create New South Wales is now situated. It has been situated for many years, which is on Gadigal country, which is in Sydney, in the CBD of Sydney, and around Central before, now in the CBD of Sydney. I'd like to acknowledge First Nation people that have worked with Create before, with the people that have worked with the Art Gallery as well through many years as well, and and to the elders that we take knowledge from, and our cultural knowledge and our cultural sustainability, I suppose, that makes us a quite unique, powerful, and a brilliant mob of people that are from all these lands and all these nations. So thank you for listening. Just put it back to Taji now to get our webinar underway. Thank you, Taji.
Thanks, Colin. That was a really lovely acknowledgement of country. My name is Taji Morse. I'm one of the Aboriginal staff in the Arts Funding and Development team here at Create New South Wales. And today I'll be joined by Cara Pinchbeck and Georgia Connolly from the Art Gallery of New South Wales to talk to you about the Aboriginal Emerging Curatorial Placement Fellowship. It's a really long title. I'd like to acknowledge as well that I'm here on Gadigal Wongal country in Sydney's inner west, and thank you to everyone who's joined the webinar today, and thanks so much to Georgia and Cara for joining us to talk about this wonderful new opportunity. So I'll just jump to the next slide. Thanks, Nick. So we've got, I'll just intro Nick Santoro, who's doing behind the scenes with us today on the slides, and we've got Colin on the house notes, who will respond to any questions that we receive in the chat box. So before we begin with housekeeping, for anyone who's just joined us or joining us at the moment, we just ask that people keep their mics on mute and keep their cameras off, and any questions can just be put in the chat box for us to answer at the end in the Q&A session. So we'll just jump to the next slide, please. Thanks, Nick. So today's webinar is designed to assist applicants with the application process for the Aboriginal Curatorial Placement Program, and to gain a bit more insight into the placement program, as well as the work of the Aboriginal Curatorial and exhibition staff at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and to get a bit more information about support that's available to you as applicants, and also to get some tips for preparing your application to the round. So today's webinar will be covering a bit about the current funding rounds that are open, an overview of the curatorial placement itself, some tips on how to address the assessment criteria and how to make a compelling application that will stand out to the assessors. We'll also be getting, as I mentioned, a glimpse into some of the exciting projects that are happening at the gallery. And then at the end, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session to answer any questions that you may have brought with you today or may have come up during the presentation. Next slide, please. Cool. So these are some of the Create New South Wales arts and cultural funding rounds that are currently open. A bit of a long title again. We love our long titles. For more information on these funding rounds, you can visit our website. So we have a number of fellowships open at the moment, as well as our standard funding rounds. So these are all closing on Monday, the 1st of March at 5 p.m. With the exception of small project grants, quick response, which is open all year round. Next slide, please. So through the support of our program partners at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, Create New South Wales is offering the New South Wales Aboriginal Curator placement, brackets emerging, to 2 early career Aboriginal visual arts curators. The objective of this program is to support early career professional practice by giving 2 emerging arts professionals the opportunity to deepen their experience. So the fellowship recipients will work closely with the Art Gallery of New South Wales to deliver 2 key curatorial and regional engagement projects. The positions will receive support and professional mentorship provided by the gallery's manager of touring exhibitions and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander curatorial team. So to apply for the funding round, you must meet the eligibility requirements, which we've just included up here on the slide. So you must be an Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander individual, have a strong cultural affiliation with country that is now called New South Wales, be a New South Wales resident, as well as an Australian citizen, and be over the age of 18. You must have previously undertaken curatorial work, some studies in that area or projects, or have engaged in work with Aboriginal collections, or worked with Aboriginal keeping places or other sort of relevant experience. And you must self-identify as an arts practitioner who is at an emerging stage in your career. This round is also open to regional applicants, so regionally based curators and art administrators. We encourage you to apply, as one of these placements will be awarded to a regionally based applicant. So we'll just jump to the next slide. Thanks, Nick. So all of the applications to this funding round are assessed against the following 3 criteria, which are merit, impact, and viability. So I'll just spend a little bit of time breaking these down for you in the next slides. So if we just hop to the next slide to go through the merit criteria. So this is your first opportunity to tell the assessors a little bit about yourself and why you are a suitable candidate for the placement, as well as your professional experience that is relevant to the opportunity. So your responses to this section of the application will need to address, firstly, why you think you would be a suitable candidate for the Aboriginal Emerging Curatorial Placement Program, as well as the quality and reputation of any previous work, outlining your professional achievements. You will also need to provide some supporting material, including letters of support from community or industry personnel or any sort of organisations who you've previously worked with who can advocate for your application. You'll also need to provide an up-to-date CV and also some examples of previous creative work or projects that you've delivered. So these can be provided as high-res images or links to URLs. Just jump to the next slide. Thanks, Nick. The second criteria is impact, and this section of the application will ask you to define yourself as being in the early stages of your career as an emerging curator, and it will also ask you about the anticipated outcomes and benefits of this placement program for your practice/career. So articulating what the benefit of this will be on your professional development. Next slide, please. Okay, and then lastly, the criteria you'll need to address is viability, and this is where you will be asked the questions that we've listed on the slide here. So looking at your professional capacity to undertake this placement, and this can include your existing skills, knowledge and previous work history, and also you'll be asked to describe how you will be able to undertake this placement, including your availability, support to travel to the gallery, and capacity to work from home if required. Also keep in mind that you will need to be available for this placement from April 2021 on a part-time basis. So just noting that when you're completing those questions in the application form. Okay, so now that we've gone through the assessment criteria and the questions in the application form, I'll hand it over to Cara and Georgia from the Art Gallery of New South Wales to give us a presentation of some of the exciting projects that they've been working on at the gallery. So I'll hand it over to Georgia and Cara now, and we'll just jump to the next slide.
Thanks so much, Taji, for that introduction and all that information, and Colin too for your warm welcome to country. So I'm Cara. I'm one of the curators who works at the gallery and is fortunate to be part of a small but fantastic group of people who look after Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art at the gallery, which of course is on Gadigal country. And so what I thought I would do today is just give you an insight into some of the things that the gallery is currently working on, both our programs and exhibitions. And so the first image you would have seen is one of the things we're doing at the moment is working with all staff across the gallery in terms of a cultural competency program, working with staff to build cultural safety across the institution, and that's something that's very much supported by our Indigenous advisory group. So we have an advisory group who oversees what we do and offers advice on various things, and so at the moment they're really key to delivering that cultural competency program, which is something that we've wanted to do as we work towards the realisation of our new building, which opens at the end of next year, which is super exciting. But some of the programs we're doing at the moment are in response to COVID and making the collection more accessible. So here in the image here, you see some of the staff who I work alongside at the gallery, Ciara, Wesley and Liam, who've recently been developing audio tours on some of the works in the collection, which can be accessed via the gallery's website or while people are in the gallery. Because obviously we have a daily tour, so while that daily tour can't be undertaken, people can access information on works in other ways. So if we jump to the next slide, that's something that was started last year. And as well, last year, there's a lot of digital content that was produced for a regional program we run with 4 specific regional galleries across New South Wales. It's called Home, Aboriginal Art in New South Wales. And so that's a really amazing program that the gallery partners with regional galleries, the Aboriginal community in the location where that regional gallery is, and the Department of Education to provide information on art for primary school students. So last year, Liam, who you see on the left, developed some content for that program, including interviews with artists like Carla Dickens. So you can see Carla in those images there. So that's content that was shared as part of the program last year, but has kind of exists still on the gallery website to make Aboriginal art in New South Wales hopefully more widely known and more widely accessible into the future, because that's something we have a real commitment to at the moment at the gallery and something that we're wanting to do more of. So if we jump to the next slide. Thank you. One of the other programs that we run at the gallery is called the Jammu Program, and it has various arms to it. So I thought I'd just mention two of those arms today. One of them is a regional arm. And over recent years, that regional program has been developed in close collaboration with Uncle Badger Bates and the staff at Broken Hill Regional Gallery, and kind of has built up over a number of years. And late last year, it resulted in gallery staff travelling out to Wilcannia and working with students at Wilcannia Central School to actually do a canoe and coolamon making project, which is very much run by Uncle Badger Bates and supported by Anthony Haywood and David Doyle. So we'll see in the following images some of that sort of program in action as it rolled out, because it allowed students from Wilcannia Central School to work with Badger and Anthony and David to actually cut a canoe from a tree along the banks of the Barker or Darling River. So if we jump to the next slide, you'll see some old scar trees, canoe trees, along the banks of the Barker, which was really the sort of looking at these trees last year. Badger said, you know, what I'd really like to do is work with students to make some canoes. And so that initial conversation alongside these trees led to the project that was then rolled out. And in the next slide, you'll see Badger working with the students to actually cut the canoe from the tree. If we can jump to the next slide, please. Yep, there we go. So you see the students there with Badger cutting the canoe from the tree. And in the following slide, you'll see the tree with that canoe removed. And it was a really amazing project where school students, Badger and community at Wilcannia and gallery staff were working together on a really fantastic project, which will have an ongoing legacy. Badger and gallery staff have plans for this project to continue this year and into the future as well, which is really super exciting and something that we're really committed to at the gallery. Rather than doing sort of one-off projects, we like to do sustained projects with artists or communities or schools that we're working with. And so you see in the centre of the image there with the Save Our Darling Barker t-shirt, that's Wesley Shaw, who's really been running this program over the past years. And if we jump to the next slide. Thank you. Another arm of the Jammu program is working with juvenile justice centres in New South Wales. And the program that's been run with those centres recently has worked with the Ghana artist, James Tyler, and James and Wesley have been working with young boys at juvenile justice centres to create their own shields. So it's very much related to the Canoe project, but making shields over a number of weeks. So each week, Wesley and James would travel to see the kids, work with them, show them how to make a shield, ensure that they could take the time to actually work on their own object, to carve it, incise it when necessary, attach the handle, and then paint this shield so that they have their own artwork at the end of the project. And obviously, while that process is being undertaken, there's a lot of discussions that can happen about the importance of culture, about sharing knowledge of working with materials from country, and really the continuation of culture and how important that is, particularly in New South Wales in this moment. So we can probably jump through the next two slides quite quickly. They'll show you some examples of those shields as they're first being made and kind of the process of shaping them. And then these are some of the boys' works that were realised at the end of the project, which are just fantastic, really, to see a gallery project or program result in these amazing artworks, and hopefully the children or boys have learnt skills that they can use into the future as well. And then if we jump to the next slide, I'll hand over to my colleague Georgia.
Thank you, Cara. Hello, everyone. So I'm sitting here at the gallery on Gadigal land. It is, as Cara said, it's really great to be partnering with Create New South Wales on this project and on these placements. So I work with Cara and her team and lots of other departments here at the gallery on our regional engagement program and our touring exhibitions, and we develop shows from the collection and send them far and wide across New South Wales and across the country. But we really have a mandate to work with our regional gallery colleagues, regional artists and regional communities across New South Wales. And one of the great exhibitions that we've had on the road for a little while now, and that will continue to have a life, is the work of Mervyn Bishop, the most fantastic photographs of his that he's taken throughout his career as a photojournalist and just a great seer of people and community. So this exhibition has had displays in Broken Hill and Moree and Lake Macquarie. It will actually open in Canberra at the National Film and Sound Archive in early March. And then we're looking to send it to other communities across New South Wales. And what has been really fantastic as part of this display are some of the public programs and other talks and that have been accompanying the exhibition. And you'll see in the photos here in the bottom two images, the one on the left, Uncle Mervyn doing a bit of a slideshow, talking about his photographs and the communities in which they were taken. And we've had people identify themselves or other family and community members in those photographs, and that's been a wonderful opportunity for Uncle Mervyn himself, but also for those communities to see that connection. And then on the right is at Broken Hill Regional Gallery, the Fresh Bark participants learning to do some condition reporting with some Art Gallery of New South Wales staff. So that's a touring exhibition that is part and parcel with our overall program that we are liking to share across the state.
Thanks, Georgia.
Next slide.
And as with the Mervyn Bishop exhibition, all our exhibitions at the gallery are really developed in close consultation and collaboration with the artist whose work is being presented. And that is very much the case with one of the sort of next major exhibitions, which is opening at the gallery, I think end of March, called The National, New Australian Art. And you may have seen previous iterations of The National. This is the third iteration of this exhibition that occurs every 2 years. And what's really exciting this year is that the gallery component of the National is being curated by Matt Cox and my colleague Erin Vink. So Erin is the Assistant Curator of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art at the gallery. She's been at the gallery for just over a year now, and has really sort of pushed the inclusion of Indigenous artists in this iteration of the National at the gallery. And so you can see this year the National at the gallery will include works by Betty Muffler, Marinka Burton, James Tyler, Judy Watson and Alec Tapoti. So all of those artists have made new works for this exhibition that have been arriving over recent weeks, and some of the artists will be down at the gallery over the next few weeks helping Erin and Matt install their works in the gallery space. So a really exciting exhibition that Erin has loved working on. I think it's been a huge amount of work for her, but it'll be really exciting to see that show realised at the end of March and to have those artists in town for the show. And so I guess as well as sort of the programs we do at the National, there's a number of exhibitions that we do. So exhibitions like the National or collection exhibitions as well. So if we jump to the next slide. One of the big things that myself and the team are working on at the moment is a complete rehang of all the gallery spaces, which is huge, really. It's something that we're wanting to do before our new building opens at the end of next year, and it will start to roll out in just a few months' time. And so what you're looking at here is the gallery's grand courts, or old courts, the kind of original portion of the gallery, which has obviously been added to and added to over the years. But the grand courts haven't been completely rehung for about 50 years. So it gives us an amazing opportunity to really reconsider the works that are presented in those spaces, which have a very particular style of architecture, obviously. And so to think about the early Australian works that are included, works by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists that are included, as well as artists from other parts of the world as well. And so that's a really large project that we're working on at the moment and choosing the works that will be displayed. And alongside that, we're really reconsidering and thinking about the information that we present alongside works in spaces like this that do speak of such a particular time and obviously have kind of the legacy of that time is kind of embedded in the architecture of those spaces. And so one of the things that we have been working on is trying to Indigenise the label and ensure that Indigenous perspectives, history and comments are included in the labels and the information that contextualises the works that are included in that space and in that display. And so that's something that we'll be working on right through until the end of this year, most likely, and then we'll start working on the other spaces within the collection hangs in the existing building at the moment too. So it's kind of a really interesting time to be at the gallery to rethink really what curatorial practice is and what curatorial practice should be in this current moment to ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices, ideas, perspective, knowledge, etc. are really present and part of the thinking and shared with audiences. So that's kind of a huge thing looming on the horizon, but super exciting as well. And if we jump to the next slide, obviously, the other thing that is probably a little bit scarier than the collection rehangs is the opening of the new building, Sydney Mono Project, which if you've been in Sydney recently around the gallery, you'll see that it's rising pretty quickly out of the ground at the moment. And is due to open at the end of next year. So once we finish the collection hangs in the existing building, we'll start rolling out the displays, the exhibitions, the gallery hangs in the new building. And what's really significant within the Sydney Modern Project is that the first gallery that you will see once you enter the new building is a gallery dedicated to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art. It the Yiribana Gallery. Obviously, we've had Yiribana in the existing building, and it kind of comes with a particular history given its location in what many have referred to as the basement of the building. So it'll be really amazing to have this, new building with these fantastic spaces to display art, and to have the first gallery that you can visit when you enter this new building being dedicated to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art and artists. And as well as having that dedicated space, will also ensure that there are works by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists included throughout the other spaces in Sydney Modern as well. I think it's really important that works by our artists are seen in different gallery spaces, but also in different contexts, so that you can see dialogue between artists from diverse locations, diverse backgrounds, and to really show that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art is a vital part of world art, really. And Sydney Modern will give us those additional spaces to do some really interesting things with works that are currently in the collection, but also some new projects that we're working on at the moment, which I'd love to talk to you about, but a lot of them are still confidential. So maybe if you apply for one of the placements, you'll get to hear about them a little sooner than anyone else. But yeah, super exciting time in the gallery's history. And it would be amazing to have people apply for these placements to be part of what I think is a really great team of people working at the gallery. We all work together really closely, and some really significant things happening. So, might hand back to you now, Taji.
Sure. Thanks so much, Cara and Georgia. Sounds like some really amazing projects happening at the gallery, and as you said, a really sort of exciting time to be, part of the team at the gallery, and the work that you guys are doing. So we'll just jump to the next slide. We're now at the part of the presentation where we want to hear from any audience members who have any questions that they'd like to ask. So if anyone has a question, feel free to turn on your microphone and camera, or write it in the chat box. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so have we got any, let's see. Okay. So I've got a question actually. With the Jammu program, how often does that happen each year, Cara? Is that something that you're still sort of doing in Broken Hill, like as an ongoing sort of project?
Yeah, the Broken Hill program is ongoing, but it happens sort of in blocks throughout the year. So Wes is about to travel back up to Broken Hill to talk with Uncle Badger and others about the stage that will happen with Wilcannia Central School later in the year. And so he'll have conversations with Uncle Badger about what this year's program will look like, what Uncle Badger would like to see realised in the program, and also obviously with the school and what they would like to achieve in terms of this year's program as well. So it's one of the programs that we work on, where it's a real conversation about what the intended outcomes are, working with all of the various partners. It's not a situation of the gallery saying, well, this is what we're going to do. It's really a conversation in the sort of initial stages of each program and throughout the program for everyone to have a voice and decide what can be realised in terms of each particular program this year. So it's kind of an initial conversation that's going to happen soon about this year's program, and then that regional arm of it will be rolled out later in the year and will very much be timed around, you know, the right season to be doing the particular activity that needs to be done on country. So probably a little bit of a different approach to many other programs that happen, because it's based on collecting resources from country, and obviously that can't happen at just any time of the year. Yeah. And then the other various Jammu things, I mean, Jammu is kind of ongoing throughout the year. It's just that the different stages happen at different times throughout the year, because it is a small team of us. So it's kind of Wesley and Amanda, his colleague, working on, you know, Jammu Regional, and then they'll shift to Jammu Juvenile Justice, and then there's a metropolitan program that operates as well. So if you look at Jammu in its entirety, it's across the entire year, but each kind of arm of it happens at particular times throughout the year.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's it's really exciting actually to see how much that Jammu has grown over the years, because a bit of a fun fact, I used to work at the gallery as an educator and was part of Jammu for a while. So it's really wonderful to see that it's grown and it's included that engagement with Broken Hill, and that's an ongoing kind of, and as you said, like a conversation that just keeps sort of going, and there's some really great outcomes from that happening. Did anyone have any other questions that they wanted to ask? It doesn't look like we do.
Am I allowed to ask you a question, Tashi?
Sure, of course.
Because obviously I know you've worked at the gallery and been a fantastic colleague there, but you also undertook a placement at the gallery, and I thought it might be valuable to hear about the impact that that's had on your career, given that this is something you've done yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that's a good thing to talk about. So I did, of course, the program at the gallery a couple of years ago, which was also supported by Create New South Wales. And that was an industry introduction program for New South Wales Aboriginal arts workers, and that involved, it's kind of done in the two stages where we were with the gallery almost like in residency, and then there was a component where we would develop a project. So that supported the participants to, you know, work on a self sort of directed project. So I remember mine involved sort of working closely with the curatorial team to develop some of the resources for the collection, and that was a really valuable experience, working with the team and really getting to work with the resources and in the library as well. There's a really fantastic library at the gallery, and working with the staff. I worked with the education team as well, as it was called then. I think it's called something else now. But yeah, that was really great to sort of work across the sort of different areas of the gallery and produce a resource that then ended up going online for the community to access and hear more about the collection, and particular artists that I was wanting to sort of develop more sort of resources on. So it was a really valuable opportunity to yeah, for professional development and gaining experience working in an institution like the gallery, and understanding how that sort of space works, and yeah, getting more insight into the work of the curatorial team, because you're working across lots of different areas at the gallery there. So yeah, it was a really valuable opportunity. At the time that I was doing the program, I think I was maybe still at uni, so it was a really valuable sort of stepping stone into sort of the sector and working in the industry. So yeah, it was quite a significant opportunity, I'd say, for that professional development and growth. So yeah, it's wonderful to be able to offer an opportunity like this again to other sort of younger, or just emerging practitioners who are wanting that experience working at the gallery, and then being able to take those skills back to apply to their own sort of practice or communities, or yeah, maybe continue that with the gallery, depending on what that outcome may look like. So yeah, it's definitely a useful experience. Cool. Did we have any other questions? Otherwise, we may jump to the next slide. Yeah, let's jump to the next slide. Okay, so we've got some top tips now for applying. So our first tip would be to give Cara and George a call if you want to talk about your application. We will be sharing their contact details shortly. If you would like to contact them about your what approach you may take in your application. The next tip we would say is to check out our How to Make an Application guide on our website. We've developed some resources to help applicants apply for funding through us, and we'll also include the details on how to access that shortly. Another tip would be to articulate your responses clearly and concisely. We know that there's like a sort of 300-word limit for each question, which we suggest that you don't sort of feel pressured to fill it. Sometimes less is more, so just try to keep your responses clear and simple. Another suggestion is to start sourcing your support letters as early as you can from any community members, organisations or employers that are going to be providing those for you. Sometimes they can take the longest to source, so we suggest to try to get that those letters as soon as you can. Another suggestion or a top tip would be to work offline using Word or Google Docs. Sometimes Smarty Grants doesn't always go, sometimes there's a bit of a technical glitch, so we suggest going into the application form and copying and pasting the questions and the word count into an external doc so that you can work on those and keep saving that as you go. And then copying and pasting those responses into your application form at the time of submission. Next tip would be to ask a peer or a trusted friend to review your application before submitting. Sometimes it's just useful to get another pair of eyes on what you've written, and just to make sure that everything reads strong and clearly. Our next tip would be to consider submitting your application earlier rather than later. So definitely try not to submit it right on 5 p.m. on the closing day. We do suggest submitting it a day or two before 3 or 4, just to avoid any of those stressful sort of technical hiccups that you might get when you're submitting your application, while a bunch of other people are submitting their applications as well. When in doubt, give us a call. If you get stuck on any questions in the application form, we're here to help Monday to Friday between 9 and 5 p.m. So we'll just jump to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, this is our page on our website under the Funding and Support tab, where you can check out some of our resources. So as I mentioned, making an application help guide to help you through the application, and we also have a range of other fact sheets as well to help you write your application. We'll just jump to the next slide, please. So as mentioned before as well, these are our contact details. So Cara's, George's, and my contact details. So if you want to give us a call or send us an email, you can do so on any of these details here. And lastly, I'll just jump to the next slide. I love that transition into the last slide. Thanks so much. For tuning into today's webinar, to stay up to date with any funding announcements or any opportunities that are available through Create New South Wales, you can follow us on our social media platforms or sign up to our e-news, which you can do just by visiting our website. And of course, you can follow the Art Gallery of New South Wales's Facebook, Instagram and social media pages as well. So yeah, lastly, I'll just say thank you so much to Cara and Georgia for joining us today, and for our audience for tuning in. We hope that you found this information useful, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Yeah, feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Cool, I'll leave it there, but thanks so much, everyone. Thank you for joining, and looking forward to hearing from you soon. See ya. Bye.